What's happening, guys? Coming to you the end of June. It's actually the last day of school here in my district of New York. The garden is coming along. The peonies are still holding on even after we had a few torrential downpours and lots of wind. We've got some currants. Hopefully the birds will not get to them. Medicinals are filling in nicely. Our hummingbird plants are blooming. So the hummingbirds should be coming around. We've been hearing them, but they haven't been stopping as often because I didn't do the feeders this year. But you can see how the milkweed is really nice and happy. This is perennial rudbeckia. We've got some, I think those are strawberry kiss. Mini lilies. This is some perennial swampweed. Again, so we grow for the pollinators, because if there are no pollinators, there is no food. So you could see the raspberries. These will be ripe when they'll be black. So they're not yet ripe. Still working on cleaning up the yard. Hoping to burn all this wood this weekend. Potted up some extra American elderberry. I've got some gopher plants that I've put back by the fence to keep the woodchuck away. And I'm hoping that works. But I wanted to show you what was going on with my elderberry. As I noticed these green worms, it looked like cabbage worms. But I looked it up and it said it was cutworms. So they were eating all of the green, the foliage on the plant. And I didn't know if they were going to eat the berries. And because I have a lot of berries this year, I was kind of freaking out. So you could see the American has lots of blooms. The berries are smaller on the American elderberry, but you can see all the damage from the cutworms, and you could see that, there's poop. And so I think what I treated with homeopathy yesterday afternoon, I'm hoping is going to get rid of the cutworms. So it's been working out well. Anything that I've treated with the homeopathy is working. And so you have to wait a week in between. But you could see, I guess they're all gone because they were still on here yesterday. So, it works pretty fast. But you could see how many berries I'm going to have. There'll be quite a few. And this is the most I've ever had ever. So, I'm excited about that. This is our yellow raspberry in the back. I did not get a chance to trim that or the blueberries this year. So I'm not sure how the crop's going to be. Unfortunately, we did not get a lot of strawberries. Between the chipmunks and the bunnies, they pretty much ate all of the strawberries, which I was not happy about. This is the pink lemonade blueberries, so I'm hoping this will be my first year with berries on them. The beach plums, looking okay, but you could see I'm still getting, my lettuce is not happy. It's all going to seed. And I've been trying to pinch it back and use what we can and extend it as long as I can, but it's just not cooperating. So I'll have to re-sow again. Hopefully we get the new garden bed situated and I'll be able to re-sow it in here. Again, I'm not even seeing swallowtail babies on any of the fennel, which is disappointing too. You can see tomatoes are looking well. We did have an issue with this second tomato, was really wilted. I thought maybe vole had got in here, because we have an issue with voles, and we never had planted in the garden in the ground tomatoes here before, so I wasn't sure what it was. And then a friend of mine said to check the stem for damage, and I think that's what it was. The clip I had used, I think, had punctured the stem, but it's made a full recovery. You can see I've trimmed them all. The suckers are gone. I've trimmed a lot of the bottom leaves, and we are trying to train them this year to grow vertically. So I'll step back so you guys can see it. So last year we did train them on the cattle panel, not the trellis, on the straight cattle panel. So again, it's something new. So you'll see here, medicinals are fully taken off. They're all blooming. The squash are finally growing. Took forever. I did take a sucker off a Sweet 100 and put it here just because I only have one of them. So these are our Cacuzzi and Trombosino squash. So it's first try year growing them. So we'll see how that works. Peter Pan, I tried to generate over here to germinate. No luck. So I guess no Peter Pan squash this year. You could see the clary sage. See, something's eating that too. Again, so That book that I had recommended a few videos ago has been really helpful. I've used it for aphids. I've used it for cabbage worms. I haven't had cabbage worms on my cabbage since I used it. I did do another application yesterday, which was about, I guess, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later. I did trim some cabbage leaves so that this one pepper could get more light because it wasn't getting enough light. But you can see the string beans are filling in. Tomatoes are probably doing the best out of everybody. Again, no swallowtails on this fennel either. So we don't know if something is getting to them. The birds have been really, really active in here. You can see the onions. Looks like none of the other onions are blooming, which is good. I'll be able to cure them as long as nothing eats them, because I did have squirrels eating them in the beginning of the season when I first planted them in March. But hopefully now they're getting to be a good size. You can see all the tomatoes. We've got our basil, the calendula, and marigolds are blooming. I did pull a calendula out that was fully covered in, what was it, mealybugs? No, I can't remember now. But it's what is on the wild spinach, and I can't think of what it was off the top of my head. But I did pull that out because I didn't want it going to any of the other plants. And that's a point of companion planting, is you want the bugs to go to the flowers, not your vegetables. So the flowers are pretty, but they also serve a purpose, right? So that's our oric. It's actually the second year. That is a volunteer. I did not seed it this year, and I left it because I wanted to see if it was better the second year, and it totally is, because last year it was really puny and small. We've got the Malabar spinach. I did plant some cosmos in here to get some color, but also to bring pollinators, along with the calendula. These are our zucchinis. The lavender is filling in really nicely. It was looking really sad for a while because it was so cold, and then it got really hot, and then it was cold and hot and cold. The weather seems to kind of been regulating itself, but you could see the sweet peas. I didn't get a lot of blooms on them this year, and I think it's because it got too hot too fast. The horseradish filled out nicely, so we'll get a good harvest off of that. The watermelon is doing well. The cantaloupe is struggling. The other cantaloupe something did not come back. This is the Cacuzzi Squash. It's filling in nicely, but again, we have some pest damage. And then this is Kanjari melons that both came up. So we'll see how it goes. Last year the melons, Tommy had a trellis. You can see a previous video of that. We used old netting produce bags to tie them up to the cattle panels. But yeah, so the wild spinach I've been letting grow in the asparagus bed, where I also planted scallions, but there's also motherwort coming up in here still, because there was a large motherwort in here that I did dig up. But yeah, this is getting a lot of bug damage, and a lot of my weeds that I eat either did not grow so great this year or got a lot of bug damage. So I'm not sure what that's about either. It's been, again, another weird year. But I'm going to walk you over to the other area. So the strawberries, even the strawberries, like, we didn't get that much between critters and pests. But you'll see here, peonies are done blooming. The Weigela really needs to be staked. I don't know what it's doing. It's growing to the side, which my husband hates it, so I need to stake it better so he can live with it. But the Vitex, hopefully we'll have some more blooms on it this year. This Hydrangea is starting to open up. See, the corabells are blooming. The hellebores are calming down. You can see where I cleared out. So now you can see the two distinct honeysuckle plants. I did do a second round for the aphids on here, which I probably did not need to do, and the honeysuckle was not so happy. So again, I didn't know exactly if they were gone, but you can see like some of the flowers are not really happy. And I think that was because I did too much of the treatment. So I did the treatment and then I hosed everything down and then I cut everything back. You could see some is still on here, but it's, you know, there's some new growth where I cut everything. Yeah, see there's some stuff still there. So that we're gonna take off because I don't need this to get infected again. So this may be something that I'm going to have to keep an eye on throughout the season. But the coral bells are doing well. No blooms on the anemone. The zinnias and the million bells are holding on okay. I'm not sure if this Crepe Myrtle is going to bloom this year. This is one I had gotten on clearance, I guess like 2 years ago. So this will be white. The Miss Kim's had a disease last year. It did not bloom this year, but it didn't die either. So we're okay with that. We've got some lilies in here. Again, something is going on. This is usually these red and black beetles, and I use the Sabadil treatment on them. But see, this is something else on this evening primrose, so we're gonna yank that. So things that I don't really need and I let grow, if there's bugs on it, I just pull it because I don't need it infecting everything else. But this is probably those beetles, and they're really quick and they hide really well. So I'll have to look for them after I shoot this video. So you can see the fig tree, it's probably grown like a foot this year. So we're gonna have to move it because it's next to the house. Because I put it there when we were having construction done with our patio and it needed somewhere to go. And that was the best place for it. And it would keep it warm in the wintertime. I wouldn't have to wrap it. So you can see here, we don't really have a lot of progress. So things are kind of stunted. We think it's because the soil is not so great, even though we did amend it last year. Before we planted the tomatoes, we have a big maple tree and the roots are all in this area. And so I wanted to put new soil down, but with issues with soil and contamination and prices and shortages, we thought we would be okay because we had put a heavy layer of mulch last year and it would amend the soil. But stuff is really struggling. Like I had issues with germination. Then even stuff that I planted from starts, like the loofah, are barely growing. And it's either because they get eaten by pests or they're struggling with the soil. So yesterday I did some calendula homeopathic treatment, and that's supposed to help make them hardier against pests, but also make them a healthier plant. You can see the green stalks. Stuff is still growing. Stuff is still bolting. We have now potato beetles this year, which we did not really have last year, but you can see the extensive damage that they did. I did kill a few yesterday. They are orange and black. Those are the Colorado potato beetles. And even like, I'm not sure, some of my plants, they just have stuff going on that I haven't seen before. So I did do, again, another homeopathic treatment for the Colorado potato beetle yesterday. So we'll see how that goes. You gotta keep everything written down when you do it, so you're not doing it close together and shocking the plants, because again, it's small doses, like for like conditions, so we want to reverse the condition. So it's small doses of the pest to make the plant hardier against what it's fighting. But you can see these are starting to get spots on their leaves. I think they're going to begin to die back. They did bloom about 2 weeks ago, so we should be harvesting them soon. Hopefully we get a better crop than we did last year. But you could see like the lettuce is bolting. We did do our last succession plants of fingerling potatoes in here yesterday. That I think is from last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't know, it's written down. And then this sweet potato was done at the same time as these potatoes, and then this sweet potato was done last night as well. So that's a white sweet potato. So we use sweet potatoes a lot. I also use them for the dog. So I'm hoping that we get a decent crop out of it. And my husband likes regular potatoes, but I try not to feed us them as much because they are nightshade and we both have issues with inflammation. So that's what's going on over here. It's a nice quiet day because today's the last day of school. It's a celebration. Hope you're celebrating by you. Talk to you soon.